So what if Jesus wasn't nice? Let's talk about it. This is Bite Size Theology. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bite Size Theology, a ministry of Springfield First, where we tackle big topics around faith one bite at a time. I'm your host, Allison Means, and today I'm joined by Roger Grimmett. And today we're talking about whether Jesus was nice.
That is an interesting question. My first initial answer, Allison, is no, he wasn't nice. I mean, when you think about Jesus, there's a lot of ways to describe him, a lot of adjectives to describe Jesus. And certainly nice in terms of, like, when I think of nice, I think of that kind of comes from being loving. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you're loving toward people, you are nice. But Jesus could also say some things that challenge people, you know, that people might think, well, he's not being nice. Mm-hmm. When in reality, he's looking beyond the niceness toward improving their lives.
Yeah, I think a lot of when we think about, like, I'm a parent, you're a parent, love is not always nice. Sometimes to love your child, you have to correct them.
Excellent.
Sometimes to love your child, you have to discipline them.
Yes.
And not doing those things in, service of being nice would actually harm them in the long run.
Right. And I think you and I talked about this before we came on, the fact that, like, Jesus, when he went into the temple and there were those that were taking advantage of other people through selling their wares, and they were charging this exorbitant interest, and they were essentially just oppressing the poor, that Jesus got angry and overturned the tables of the money changers. And you would look at that and say, well, Jesus isn't being very nice there. And you're right, but he's also wanting to be, he's God and he's wanting justice. And that, to me, is more important than being, quote, nice.
Yeah, sometimes being kind and being nice are not the same
That's right.
thing.
Absolutely.
Being just, being good, being loving is not the same thing as we think of as being nice.
That makes me think, Allison, it's amazing how everything kind of fits together, that as I was thinking about this topic, I thought about the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, all of those things, self-control. I don't see the word niceness in there, but I see the word kindness in there. Yeah. And so I think that sometimes people in the church, they sort of equate Christianity with simply being nice. Yeah. And that is not the benchmark that we need to look at.
No. I think it's important for us to, as Christians, to call out evil when we see it. And you can't do that if you're being nice. Right.
If you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to hurt such and so's feelings. But and that being said, though, Allison, you know as well as I mean, we still want to be respectful. And sometimes when emotions take over, it's easy to lose that. But by the same token, being respectful, we can still speak words that might not come across as being nice, but are thoughtful and direct.
Yeah. I would say there are definitely, and Jesus gives us great examples of this in his interactions with other people. He approaches people with love. He approaches with understanding, but he doesn't walk away from a conversation without saying something like, now go and sin no more.
Mm-hmm. And he didn't necessarily come to be everybody's best friend.
Yeah, certainly not the best friend of the Pharisees and the Sadducees.
Absolutely, because he didn't compromise his principles, and neither should we for the sake of, quote, being nice.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's not what people necessarily need. What they need maybe is something a little bit more direct, which then comes across maybe not as nice, but as it is loving. And
Yeah.
it's, in the long term, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jesus, he was not a nice guy in the way that we think about niceness,
Right.
but he was something better than that.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why he's revered and respected as a result of the fact that he didn't just sort of like let people walk all over him. He would make a stand. And that's why he got crucified, because he went against the Pharisees. You spoke earlier of the Pharisees, and you could think the Sadducees and these different religious groups. He was always getting in trouble with them because he did not fit their mode.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened.
Yeah, Jesus was not a doormat,
Right.
and he did not call us to be doormats.
Yeah.
Just to make everyone think that we're, all sweetness and light all the time.
Yeah. I had a friend, Allison, years ago, and he and I came into the ministry about the same time. And he said to me one time, and I'll never forget it, certain things people say that stick with you. And he looked at me and he goes, "Roger, we're called to be servants, but not doormats." And I thought, I had never thought of it like that before. Yeah. And that has served me well through the years, because I think that sort of fits who Jesus was.
Yeah. I mean, if we let every person's opinions, thoughts on every matter, if we never disagreed with anyone, but that old saying, like, if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing.
Right.
I that's very applicable here.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Because that's nice, go along to get along. Don't want anyone to have any arguments or hard discussions or anything like that. But that doesn't help anyone.
No, it doesn't. And it's not realistic. Because the fact of the matter is we all have differing opinions on a whole host of things.
Yeah.
But we can still be very thoughtful, loving, kind, and bear the fruits of the Spirit even in the midst of that. And I think we can see that in the church.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be conflict whenever there's two people.
Absolutely.
And Jesus didn't shy away from conflict. He approached the other person respectfully, but he didn't just automatically, give way.
You're right. Yeah. And so for sure. And I think that's why, it's good to talk about this topic, because I do think that people sort of think, that's why I come to church is, I'm going to be, and we want people obviously to be respectful and nice and kind, but by the same token, don't let it stop there. Don't, go beyond that to a deeper relationship.
There's a certain facade and fakeness.
Yeah.
When you're just nice
Yes.
all the time. I don't know if you've ever heard people talk about Midwest nice.
Yes.
And that's specifically what they mean, is where people are saying a nice thing, but they don't mean it in a nice way.
Yes.
Or it's like, "Oh, aren't you cute? And really they mean like, "Wow, you're not so smart." Or
there's kind of some hypocrisy in that.
Yeah.
That's kind of what comes to mind as you're speaking of that. And people they're looking for real. They're not looking for fake.
Right.
They're looking for genuineness and authenticity. And I think the more we can model that, because quite frankly, there's times that we're human. We're not always going to feel, quote, nice.
Oh, yeah.
Monday mornings is an example, right? Unless we have our coffee and then get some rest. But so.
Yeah. So Jesus wasn't nice, but he was better. And that's something for us to try to emulate. Thanks for joining us on this week's Bite Size Theology. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Bite Size Theology, where we take big ideas around faith and break them down one bite at a time. We hope today's conversation has helped you grow in your understanding and sparked new insights in your journey of faith. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. And as always, if you have questions or you want to dive deeper into today's topic, feel free to reach out. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep growing.